I started coming in and going to clubs and theaters a lot to see bands in New York City when I was probably about 14 or 15. So yeah, at that point, the city it seemed a lot more dangerous and dirty and scary, and you had to go to weird neighborhoods to see bands or see bands in gay clubs or weird like afternoon matinee shows and or after hours places and stuff. It was just you had to look a lot harder, but it felt like there was a lot more going on. I know it's a cliche thing to say that it was so much more vibrant and happening back then, which in some ways is true, but I think back then people had to work harder to get noticed. Back then there was no MySpace, there wasn't really much of a mainstream music press to talk about. Yeah, it was much more of an underground. I don't know how much of an underground exists today. I mean, because of that, you could see a band like U2 coming over and playing their first show in New York for three bands for $3 at the Palladium in the day before it became a dance club for the night. And you could see, the Police play for 7 people at CBGB just because and this will tie into what we're going to talk about later, but it's going back to that. You had to be amazing live, and you had to have great songs and be able to perform to get noticed. There was the same thing where people would put out like, some single on a major label or 12-inch as was the case then, and they would do a date in a club, and you'd be psyched to go see it, and then you'd see they were singing, lip syncing, and it was a big letdown. But and that would be something that was bigger than any rock band you could think of at the time, or more hotly tipped to happen. And then you would go see, I don't know, like I said, and either like go see the Damned or the Police or X or somebody in a club, and they were that much better. So it's had a lot of ups and downs since then. I mean, yeah, it was really happening then, and in the late '70s and the early '80s, the scene I was a part of the most, of course, is the New York hardcore scene because I was playing in one of the bands, and those were all my friends, and that was pretty amazing because it was even those people were even outsiders in respect to in respect to indie rock. It became more of a divide there, but I felt like after hardcore got a little too violent, then things really died for a while and just nothing was going on. And this is like there was that sort of like late '80s, early '90s kind of wasteland where, yeah, there would be interesting bands coming through or coming out of New York once in a while, whether it was like Sonic Youth or, who were around much longer, but Sonic Youth sort of growing at that time. And it's hard to think back that far. But yeah, once in a blue moon they'd be coming and playing, but there was no Barry Ballroom, there was no Mercury Lounge. You basically had CBGB, or you went, on the PATH train to Maxwell's if like whatever Yola Tengo or Sugar or somebody couldn't play at CB's. And then there was Irving Plaza. You had to be a little bigger to do that. The Roseland, you had to be bigger than that. I mean, it was really a lot of the other places where I had started going to shows when I was really young, like Hurrah, Peppermint Lounge, Danceteria. They were all gone. They were all shut down, or some of them had turned into just clubs that were about really, selling drinks and drugs and whatever. So it was a lot different. And that's around the time that I started my company. It was like the early '90s because I started seeing bands that to me started it seemed like there was something of a renaissance going on when my first client was a band called Helmet, who were a pretty prominent New York band. They ended up signing to a major label later, selling a few million records. I think one of the guys in the band the main guy in the band is still around, flogging the name. The other guys do other stuff. And it started getting really interesting again at that point.